Explain like I'm 5. What actually happens when we unintentionally start to drift off to sleep, but our body suddenly shocks us awake? Please subscribe, like and leave a comment. Much love to you all. I work in neuro, and I don't know the answer to this. Scrolling through the first few top comments, I'm seeing wildly different answers. Rather than further misinformation, I'll just interpret the Wikipedia entry. Looks like the reaction is not understood, but is probably the activation of the reflex to stay upright. When your muscles relax, when you fall asleep, it may accidentally be interpreted as weightlessness, falling, which may trigger the response. So if anyone knows more than this, rather than spread dubious information, please update the wiki with your sources. The upright reflex sounds interesting. We do have arboreal ancestors. Maybe it's tied to not falling out of the tree while you're dozing. That doesn't explain why it hits me as I'm laying on my back on the bed, as opposed to it not hitting when falling asleep on the bus. I've jerked awake on the bus, in a car, pretty much everywhere. Boy, that could've been a bad mistype. Above. From my understanding of some theoretical model of how sleep works, and explained in the way a 5-year-old who understands enough to ask this question. The different parts of your brains that control what you do talk to each other through waves of electricity when you're awake. When you start to sleep, one big sleep wave goes over your whole brain, so the different parts of your brain can't hear each other anymore over this big wave. When you feel like you're falling asleep little by little, almost rhythmically, that is the sleep wave trying over and over again to stop the parts of your brain from talking to each other. When you suddenly wake yourself, that's one or more parts of your brain sending waves out louder because they don't know why they can't talk to the other parts anymore. Then the big sleep wave has to try again, and hopefully it will stop all of the different parts of the brain from talking to each other. So there's just one big rhythmic wave and you can get some sleep. So like being in a boat, throwing stones in a pond, then dropping a big boulder in, the larger wave produced would dissipate smaller ones, but effectively create such a large wave that it upsets the boat you're resting in. There's a name for this phenomenon. It's called a hypnic jerk or sleep start. Experts don't know the exact cause of sleep starts, but what seems to be happening is that there's a neurological tussle between the brain systems that keep you awake and the ones that encourage you to fall asleep. Hopefully I understood your question as you wanted. Autonomic brain, drifting off to sleep app, limbic system, you're losing consciousness, possibly dying, jolt, whole brain, take it easy, just trying to sleep. It's always the limbic system. I'm curious why they call it sleep start and not sleep stop. Probably because a start is also a term for a sudden movement of alarm or surprise. I have read that if you go to sleep too hard and your body functions go down too much, your body tries to jumpstart you back to consciousness so that you can evaluate if there is a problem. Yeah, I read somewhere that it's your body falling asleep too quickly and your brain thinks it's dying. So it jerks itself to see if you're really dying or not. So you are so great at falling asleep you are fooling even yourself. More like you can't fall asleep correctly that your brain thinks you are dying and reminds you that you suck at even sleeping. You are not great at falling asleep, you are just bad at dying. Got it. If I ever think I'm dying, jerk myself. I was taught that this is your body's reaction to falling asleep quite suddenly. As your heart rate and breathing slow, your nervous system sends a jolt through your body to make sure you're all good. Your heart decides to chill out for bed, and so your heart rate drops to a literal resting rate. It's too sudden for your noggin and your brain goes, oh, am I dying? And boops you awake to check. Best answer thus far, good sir. I have been suffering with NES, that is psychogenic non-epileptic seizures or conversion disorder, for a while, and this resembles what my jolts are like, just more violent and painful. Thank you for posting this. I read a research paper a few months ago about the hypnagogic jerk, what you're describing. It's observed in most primate species, and is assumed to be your body forcing a hard check on how sturdy the place you're sleeping is, i.e. if you were a chimp sleeping in a tree, to see how sturdy the branch is. Like all assumptions like this in animal psychology, it's questionable, but interesting. It is called a hypnic jerk point. When the body detects your heart rate slowing rapidly, it tries to shock you awake. I was always told that I was being carried off to heaven by angels, but they dropped me back to my body. That is 100% the correct answer. My girlfriend is in medical school and I speak with her about a lot of these topics and learn a lot, and I'm an engineer. So I will explain it to you as a combination of both. It's believed to be an evolutionary response, but again, like all things, this is a theory. The logic is a combination of all things I've read here. In theory, and as such all explanations from here on out are the most likely accepted theory. It is believed that this is because yes, we don't want to fall asleep suddenly in an unsafe situation. Hence the falling asleep, not passing out all at once, called narcolepsy. Our brain also communicates with distinct lobes, and as a result, as we sleep, these slow down. They never go away entirely, otherwise we'd die immediately. As they slow, assuming we are in a safe situation. Falling asleep in truth is still, to a nervous system, feeling like we are fading. Our body also does secrete compounds to help us stay asleep. However, a combination of these constitute the proper process. We need to be safe. If we aren't, we better wake up. If we are safe, then our mind begins the process. Now our brain is having trouble communicating now. Are we okay? Heart rate is slowing. Breathing is slowing. Is it time to panic? Let's see. So then we spasm. Okay, so now that we didn't run. We are okay. Now restart this. Let's now try to force ourselves to sleep. As we do, we relax. Now this comes as a few waves, hence the falling asleep. We will do these together and slowly fall asleep while testing our movement as we go and eventually fall asleep. Startling us results in us basically flooding ourselves with adrenaline and waking up immediately. Otherwise, minor threat. Okay, back to it. And we do this bit by bit until we finally doze off. That is the process. There are way more details and disorders. For example, if our body continues to force us to sleep, but we are waking up and do wake up fully, our body has tried to keep us asleep and immobilized us. This is called sleep paralysis, but that is the normal process. As a narcoleptic, passing all out at once is not narcolepsy. You may be thinking of cataplexy, which a lot of narcoleptics have, which is a sudden loss of muscle tone, which also doesn't involve falling asleep. Narcoleptics rarely fall asleep suddenly out of nowhere. What is much more common is feeling extremely sleepy all of the time, which can be hard to fight when circumstances make it more challenging, such as doing mundane tasks or driving long distances at night. As a fellow narcoleptic, +1. I get these sleep jerks constantly when in places I'm not comfortable falling asleep, class, work, public. We are more prone to just go straight into REM and have vivid dreams, or dream and get the sleep jerks seconds apart. As far as I'm aware, the top comment is bullshit. There's no evidence for any of this. What I heard though, which is a theory that actually makes sense, is essentially your consciousness still being awake on some level whilst your body engages paralysis for sleep, so you don't act out your dreams. With your awareness of that sensation of flaccid paralysis being interpreted as that of falling. Since our brain is shrouded in such mystery, I can only explain from my experience and my attempt at finding an answer for this exact question. This is what happens as you fall asleep doing your homework, reading a book, or just watching some stupid YouTube videos. At some point, your brain will signal you its desire to sleep. Your voluntary part of the brain still completely control your body and senses. You ignore it and force yourself to continue with your task. This is where your voluntary parts of the brain still have majority of the control. After some time, you start to have tunnel vision, like all your working parts of the brain pull resources in the task at hand, and you start to notice less and less about your surroundings, like the music you were listening ATM for example. Now the voluntary parts of the brain have almost lost their control over your physical parts and senses, but are hanging on barely. Any sudden alerting thing can still make the voluntary parts force awaken the rest of the brain. So, this is one case that's similar to your question. Even further now, you are getting so tired, and the voluntary parts of the brain has lost the control to your involuntary ones, but they are still not totally done, yet they still keep some small part of self-awareness, but mostly your brain is occupied by automatic thoughts and dreamy images similar to when you are fully sleeping. At this point, it's still easier to jolt you awake by some sudden thought or an internal alarm in your brain than when you are completely sleeping. This is a slightly deeper case of your question than the above. Beyond this point, you are approaching total loss of physical awareness and a normal sleeping state of the brain. But it's still possible to have thought processes that you voluntarily deemed important/essential somewhere in a tiny corner of the voluntary bits of the brain. Like for example, if you were doing a homework that you know you have to complete today, or you just don't want to miss out on today's out of procrastination time, or that song you really like listening to, etc. And that small corner may be able to procure enough resources to remind the rest of your brain of the task at hand. All of a sudden, an alarm goes off internally and you are jolted back from sleep. I apologize if this ended up being too long to read, but I thought it was more important to put as much info as I can to make it easier to understand without actually using any technical terms. You can actually observe all of these events if you focus hard enough next time you go to sleep. It can be a fun task to analyze how your brain's routine works from a third-person perspective internally, like a computer with a task manager open. I've heard that it is because your blood pressure drops too quickly. Not sure how accurate it is, but that's always what I attribute it to. I used to drink a lot, and often my arms would jerk/twitch when I slept. After quitting, it doesn't happen anymore, so I'm not sure of the correlation. It is a defensive mechanism of our body. Sometimes during sleep and super relaxed, our heart rate drops dangerously low and our body's response is to release adrenaline hormone. So in your dream you are falling, but actually your heart rate is falling, and then boom, your body revives you and made you awake.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.